Okay, so tell me a little bit about Planned Parenthood Illinois. What does it do and how is it different than Planned Parenthood of Illinois?
Great. So that is an excellent question that I feel like I don't get asked enough and allowed to expand upon enough. So Planned Parenthood Illinois is the healthcare branch of Planned Parenthood in Illinois, as well as the education arm. We have 17 health centers as well as telehealth. And we provide, or Planned Parenthood provides high quality, affordable reproductive health care. That goes anywhere from STI testing, gender affirming hormone therapy, cancer screening, abortion services, as well as well person check-ins. Our Planned Parenthood also provides medically accurate sex education to schools as well as community organizations in general. So for me, I work for Planned Parenthood Illinois about 20% of the time, but the majority of my work falls under Planned Parenthood Illinois Action. And that's who I will be speaking from today. So Planned Parenthood Illinois Action is our advocacy arm. We do nonpartisan political work and organizing, advocacy, etc. We organize our supporters to advocate for common sense policies in Springfield. What I think is really cool about Planned Parenthood Illinois Action is, of course, we advocate to protect reproductive rights, but we also advocate for any issue that affects our patients. And obviously, Planned Parenthood serves pretty much everyone, a wide variety of people, which is why we have 4 distinct advocacy programs. The first being our Black organizing program, the second being Raiz, our Latinx organizing program. We also have a relatively new young people organizing program, a patient organizing program. So I apologize, there's 5. And lastly, the newest, which I created about 2 to 3 years ago, our disability advocacy and organizing program, which I'm guessing is what you'll be most interested in today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, because that's what I was gonna get to. So like tell me a little bit about what Planned Parenthood is doing in terms of like helping people with disabilities, in terms of like disability advocacy and other things that help people with disabilities. What other issues do you focus on?
Yeah, so I think that starting the disability advocacy and organizing program is really our first sort of dipping our toe into disability advocacy work and the disability community, working with the disability community. So one of the largest goals of the program is to increase the number of supporters who identify as disabled and bring those people to the table to have conversations. In addition, supporting legislation in Springfield that advocates for disabled folks and that are disability-led organizations that have legislation in Springfield supporting that, as well as doing internal advocacy. So advocating for more accessible health centers, as well as accessibility practices for our staff, advocating for staff with disabilities. Um, we also create partnerships. I've been working with several organizations that we did not have partnerships with prior to the creation of the program. So that's been one of my favorite parts as well. I think that a really good example of something that Planned Parenthood Illinois Action has done that was not in place before that does advocate for folks with disabilities is we have hosted several large rallies. After the Dobbs decision, after the fall of Roe, we hosted several rallies. And before the program was started and before we really started becoming disability minded, those rallies were not very accessible. And we have slowly started to put in place accessibility practices. So now at every rally we have, there are 2 ASL interpreters and hopefully one in the crowd as well. We have an accessible ADA section blocked off in front of the stage for wheelchair users, as well as anyone that may need like a space that is not in the crowd, so for overstimulation, etc. And yeah, we're making sure that there's an adequate amount of bathrooms for folks with disabilities as well, that we have ADA bathrooms. And these were not really things that were necessarily considered beforehand. And I'm really proud of that. That job with the first few rallies we had also largely fell to me. As someone who is disabled myself, I was considered sort of the de facto expert on that, despite the fact that I only have one disability. So I have sort of been imparting that knowledge on my coworkers. And in the last rally we had, the largest one where we saw like 15,000 people show up, one of my coworkers took on that task and did an excellent job at it. So imparting that knowledge throughout the affiliate and making the affiliate as is PPIA, making PPIA really think about disability and think about how we can be more accessible and more culturally humble has been really cool to watch, and I'm really proud of that work. In addition, we know that disability affects everyone. So I work with the other program managers to create events and create conversations that really address intersectionality. So for example, I'm really excited because during Black History Month, me and the Black Organizing Program Manager, Mariana, are hosting a small community conversation as well as a larger webinar about mental health in the Black community. And I just think that that is so fantastic that we're having those conversations, and that really starting those conversations is really important. Those conversations need to be followed up with action. But I think that just starting, you got to start somewhere, right? Like Rome wasn't built in a day. And we are starting to have those conversations and bringing disability into the reproductive rights space. And that was a very long-winded answer, but I hope that you get a sense of what we are doing for disabled folks at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My next question here is, how do you go about addressing the barriers that people with disabilities and others face, with regards to like lack of access to healthcare and other issues? Like what do you do in that regard?
Yeah, so I think that, like I said, I think the rallies is a great example. Just making sure we are thinking about disabled people at all times. In addition, like I said, that internal advocacy work, things are sort of trickling out. So now we're starting to think about communications access. People are starting to think about physical barriers that we see in our health centers internally. We're starting to think about how we can make the affiliate a more friendly place to work for people with disabilities. And all of that is happening just because of starting these conversations. And I really think that that is the first step. This is relatively new, so it's exciting to see it grow. I think that, I had another barrier that I was thinking about, but I can't think about it right now. Oh, thank you. So another thing that I think is really important is that there's this misconception and this stigma that people with disabilities don't have sex, that people with disabilities don't need access to reproductive health care. And that's just simply not true. So making sure that we're addressing that stigma, that we have representation of people with disabilities, that we are working in partnership with disability organizations and encouraging them to have those conversations about sex, about abortion, about STIs, is something that's going to make a huge impact. And Planned Parenthood is definitely someone who can help start those conversations about reproductive health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like, any stakeholders that you partner with in your efforts?
Yeah, so my building partnerships has by far been my favorite part of starting this program. As I said, I am someone with a disability, so getting to meet other disabled folks who are doing advocacy work has been so amazing. So some folks that we are working with, and we are Illinois based, we're Planned Parenthood Illinois Action, so these orgs are Illinois based as well. I work with our local Center for Independent Living out of Chicago. I think they're actually more than out of Chicago, but Access Living. So they're our Center for Independent Living. I also work with Disability Lead, which kind of reminds me of this podcast, actually, where they are bringing together leaders in the disability community and creating a network of disabled leaders. So it's been really cool. So I can like email the head of disability lead because I'm a member, and I can be like, oh, I'm looking to do a event on, for example, mental health in the Black community. And then she can connect me with someone who's doing that work. So it's very, very useful and helpful for creating partnerships and meeting new people. I also have a very, very strong relationship with University of Illinois, Chicago, who has a fantastic disability studies program. Don't quote me on this, but I believe that they have one of the largest disability studies programs in the country. And they also do a lot of advocacy work. So I've been working with them pretty frequently since the beginning of the program. And this is most certainly not an exhaustive list. I've worked with a lot of individuals as well who just want to be involved in the program and help build it. I was honestly, when I started the program, I was so worried. I was like, this could go either way. It's either going to be like super successful, or it's just going to be a
Yeah.
total failure because people won't be interested in it. And the amount of support and the outpouring of support, even before the fall of Roe, was just absolutely massive and so exciting to me. There's so many people that want to be involved in the program, so many organizations that are like, this is great. We don't have these conversations enough. The disability community doesn't talk about sex and reproductive health enough. So it's been so great to see the support there.
Mm-hmm. Finally, you talk about the stigma of reproductive health and everything like that. So, like, how do you go about addressing this, the stigma of disability? Because that's also present in our society. Like, how do you go about addressing it from like a healthcare perspective as an organization?
We talk about it. Planned Parenthood most certainly is not an organization, and even our advocacy arm, we are not an organization that is afraid to talk about sex. I'm not afraid to come on this podcast and say things like I just said, like disabled people have sex. And I think that in society in general, we don't talk about it enough. It's something that is just not discussed as much as it should be, and that causes harm. So we start those conversations. I actually had an event where we talked about sex ed in schools and how that's something that we advocate for a lot, and we're working to change the standards on we actually did change the standards on sex ed in schools in Illinois. But I brought up too is like, what about disabled students? Like, do we have sex ed that is culturally humble, that allows disabled students to learn about sex in a developmentally appropriate way? Are you teaching people who use wheelchairs how to have sex in a safe way? Is that a part of your curriculum? Because if it's not, it should be. And I partnered with someone, graphic novelist, A. Andrews, who is absolutely fantastic, wrote a graphic novel called Sex and Disability, like How to Sex and Disability. that discusses this sort of thing. And I promoted the graphic novel that goes into great detail about sex and disability. And that's what's so important. And I think that that's how you fight any stigma. That's how you fight abortion stigma, is you talk about it. And that's how you fight the stigma around sex and disability as well.
Yeah, those are important.
Most certainly.